So according to multiple reports now, Brent Venables is very close to a deal becoming the Oklahoma Sooners' next head coach. And we're just going to go a little bit in depth into why that makes sense for him. He was at Oklahoma for quite a while, before he was at Clemson, obviously. Now, he was with the program from, I think, 1999 through 2011, if you trust Wikipedia, where he was working as a defense coordinator and as a linebackers coach for Bob Stoops. So it makes sense for him to go back to that program because that's where his roots really came from. He ended up joining Clemson in 2012. He's been there ever since, obviously, but he was a coach, head coaching candidate for several schools before choosing to go to Clemson and be a defensive coordinator and work with Dabo Swinney. And now, obviously, Clemson's defensive has been great during the time Venables has been there. He's been a real character guy for them. Just on the sideline, he's been someone who's very recognizable, obviously, because of how fired up he is. There have been moments where it seems like him and Dabo have clashed a little bit more in the past 2 years on the sideline than usual. That could be nothing, obviously. It could be something, who knows. I'm sure we'll find out eventually. But right now, he's leaving Clemson at a very strange time. And of course, it's not strange for him. This just makes sense for him to go to Oklahoma. I mean, the job like this doesn't open every year. And this is a job that he obviously wants because he has ties to the program. It makes a lot of sense for him to take the spot right now. And no one should fault him for doing that because it's what's best for him. It's what's best for his family. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of money for doing this. And, that's sometimes you have to go for that life-changing money. Because you're setting up not just yourself, but your kids, your grandkids, for their futures. Of course, one of his sons is transferring out of Clemson after this year. I think it's Jake, I want to say, is transferring out, I believe, because he's dealt with a lot of injuries and he's just kind of looking to move on from football, looking to kind of focus on his career instead of doing football. Obviously, because playing college football is almost a full-time job. So one of his sons is leaving Clemson. He's going back to Oklahoma. He's kind of leaving the program right now, and it's a very weird spot. 9-3 season so far, not counting the bowl game I'm sure we'll eventually play in. And the defense was good this year. I think they were second only to Georgia, I believe, in points allowed. So it was a very good defensive year. Surprisingly, considering the defense didn't look great at points throughout the year. A lot of that had to do with injuries, though. You lose Brian Brzee. You have Darian Kendrick and Mike Jones Jr. transferring out. You have to replace those guys immediately. Andrew Booth Jr. missed the game, I believe. You had injuries in the secondary. One of the safeties, Landon Zanders, missed most of the year. So you have to deal with all that and trying to put together a defense that will be able to sustain itself. And it's really difficult to do that at any school. And Clemson right now has guys like Brian Brzee, Myles Murphy, Andrew Booth Jr., Trent Simpson. They have guys who are going to be drafted. But it's not the same as a Georgia or an Alabama kind of defense where they have guys who are going to be drafted on every level, and there's 2 or 3 of them at every level. It's not the same right now for Clemson. They do have a lot of really good players. David Thomas, Tyler Davis, KJ Henry, who's someone who's highly underrated, could be drafted, Sheridan Jones. There are players out there that are really good for Clemson right now. Mario Goodrich, but I just don't think it's the same level of NFL talent as someone like Alabama or Georgia might have. But I could be wrong. We'll see come draft time. I'm sure Andrew Booth is going to go this year. It would make a lot of sense for him to go. He'll probably be a first-round pick. Tyler Davis might come back. He's had so many injuries. He has to prove he can stay healthy. Ideally, if he went out, he'd be probably taken in the top 3 rounds. But again, injuries, you don't really know with that. Trent Simpson has to come back for another year. He's been a huge part of the defense. I'm happy he's coming back. James Skalski, unfortunately, is at the end of his career at Clemson. He's been here for a while, but he can't stay any longer. Mario Goodrich and Sheridan Jones, I really don't know. Goodrich had a really good year this season. It would kind of make sense for him to go right now while the iron's hot and not waste it. I think he's actually a senior anyways. He might have to go. But Sheridan Jones, maybe we get him back. And looking down the line, like I said, Tyler Davis will probably come back. I think KJ Henry has to go, because he was graduating from undergrad the same time I was in 2020. Because I think it was him, I was there, I think Travis Etienne was there as well, all graduating from undergrad at the same ceremony. So I think he has to go this year to the draft. But we are going to be losing some pieces. We're getting a lot of guys in. Granted, decent recruits coming in to kind of fill those spots. It's just a question of, losing a guy like Venables is an impact on your program at so many levels because Now you've got to replace that personality, replace a guy who is really a player's coach to some extent, like someone people love to be around from a player perspective, someone who really built a strong rapport with the players. On top of that, you have to replace someone who's just very good at their job, just very good at being defensive coordinator. And you have to kind of replace that energy. And now you have to kind of convince some of the recruits maybe that who are going to come here for defense to play for Venables, be like, hey, we're still going to get a guy in here who's going to do really well. You're still going to be playing for a winning program. You're still going to be playing for Dabo Swinney. And we're still going to be trying to compete for a national title. It's just you have to convince them of that. And we do have some very talented players coming in the next recruiting class. It's just a question of, can we maintain all of those guys without Venables? I think we can. But, you never really know with these situations. They're always kind of toss-ups where you're not really sure what's going to happen when a guy leaves. Obviously, it's different when someone like a head coach leaves. It's obviously quite different. Then you get this whole flux of guys transferring out, decommitting. It's a little bit different for Clemson because you still have Dabo, you still have a lot of the main pillars of that program are sticking around. But Brent Venables was obviously the number 2 in that sense of being on that coaching staff. He's the number 2 guy because everyone knows he's the most important coordinator there. Everyone knows right behind Dabo, he's the most important man. But he's going to be leaving for Oklahoma. Wish him well. It's going to be very interesting to see how he turns that program around or if he's capable of doing that. Like I said, he was a head coaching candidate back in 2012 for a bunch of other jobs, much smaller jobs in Oklahoma. But we'll see how it works out. It's going to be interesting because he has to transition from the Lincoln Riley era where now all these guys are decommitting from the program. All these guys are transferring because he's no longer there. And you're getting ready to transition to the SEC where, frankly, you're going to be a mid to low level program compared to other schools in that conference. So we'll see how that all works out. Hopefully it works out well for him because I would love to see him have success after this great run at Clemson. But, yep, unfortunately, Brent Venables is gone. So that's all for that. Talk to you guys later.